Hello there, everybody. I'm just going to kind of blab and say nothing at all here for a moment until I can see that I'm here and I'm online and that everybody's hearing me and seeing me, and until I see some people talk, because, what's the use of really kind of going on and talking about loads of things? There we go. Wow, there's one person who's here already. Thanks for showing up, everybody. This is a special birthday edition of me coming on to YouTube Live, but I thought I'd do something different tonight that I've never done, which is those of you who watch my regular YouTube videos about transits, or who read my daily, whenever I can get to it, posts on the moon's position in a particular nakshatra. You know that I do these things called lunar scopes. Well, I'm going to do the lunar scope live tonight, right? I just thought that might be fun. And I might come on and do this every once in a while because it just seems like a good idea. So first of all, before we get into things, I want to say thank you for everybody who's been wishing me a happy birthday. It's very kind of you and very heartwarming, and always good to know that there are so many people there that are watching. And it's just, it's phenomenal to me, like getting all these birthday wishes from all these people. And I don't mean for that to sound egotistical, because it's not egotistical at all. It's just very heartwarming. So I wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for all your birthday wishes. I thought I'd wait for a few more people to get here before we do the lunar scope today. I thought I'd also mention to everyone who may be interested, I have a new range of intensive consultations that are kind of along the lines of my already existent intensive consultations. I'll explain that. I have a consultation that basically looks at your general overall karma as shown through Rahu and Ketu, and it also allows for extra question space. I decided to do that recently with relationships, so looking at the nodes in terms of the Navamsha and Saptamsha and the Rashi, or finances, looking at the nodes in association with the Hora chart and the Chaturtamsha and the Rashi, and equally with career, looking at the Rashi and the Dashamsha and the nodes in those particular positions, and trying to understand karma in every single one of those areas. This is a new thing for me, so I've just put these up recently, and I'm offering an initial discount on these particular consultations until 10 p.m. tonight if you want to schedule at the link I'm going to put in the video here. Okay. So I thought that we would go into the lunar scope here. And for all of you who like the technical aspect of astrology, you're probably really going to enjoy this, because I'm going to go a little more deeply into the things that are here and hopefully have a lot more fun with it. Not that I don't have fun the other times, but have a lot more fun this particular time. Okay. So here we go. The moon tomorrow, because I'm doing it for the 12th of April. Today's the 11th April. It's my birthday, but I'm doing it a day ahead for the 12th. Pardon me, tickly throat. Thank you. So I'm doing it for the 12th of April, when the moon will be in Punarvasu Nakshatra. Now, before I go into the energy of the day, something that a lot of you may not know is that even though I'm talking about the moon's position, there's so much more that's going on beneath the surface in my lunar scopes, because things that I take into account are final dispositorship. So in other words, moon being in Punarvasu Nakshatra, I'd go look at Jupiter in Jupiter's Nakshatra, which would be Mula. And then I'd go look at Ketu and where Ketu's at, which is Uttara Ashada. And then I'd go look at the sun, see where the sun's at, which is in Ashwini, which is connected to Ketu, and kind of put it all together into a package for everybody, and also look at the aspects to the moon. All those things go into consideration in addition to some elements from the Panchanga for the day, right? But I'm not going to get too techno on you, right? Because that would just be too deep, right? So in association with the energy of the day, there's something that you have been wishing to bring to fruition for quite a while. And before you ask, well, what is that thing is? Well, you know what? A lot of that depends on your particular chart, right? And where all the planets that I'm taking into consideration are. But you'll probably naturally tune into this yourself and go, oh, well, that's about this and that's about that. So just follow that impulse. That's what helps you the most with it, right? I can't do everybody's horoscope individually, right? So I have to kind of do it generally. But there's something that you've been looking to support and wishing to bring into creation. The thing is it's likely not gelling or congealing in the manner that you would like for it to. So you find yourself in a position where you're coming up against resistance. Things that you were hoping to work out are not quite working out to the level that you would like for them to. And it's got you feeling somewhat, well, for lack of a better way to put it, disenchanted. One part of you goes, well, maybe I just need to put more energy into this. If I put more energy into it, I can completely achieve it. But as you're putting more energy into it, perhaps what you're feeling is that nobody's supporting you in putting the energy into the situation in the manner that you would like for them to. And that's frustrating, right? But at the moment, you need to focus more on supporting others, supporting the situation that's really kind of, well, for lack of a better way to put it, your brainchild. Even if it does involve other people, it's still your brainchild because you're looking at it through the lens of your own consciousness and your own individual involvement. So, of course, you're going to see it a specific way. So, if that is your choice and your energy that you're wishing to put out, to expect somebody else to step in and go, oh, I see it exactly the same way you do, well, even though that's a desire, and even though you might actually find a person or two along the way, you may not find it in exactly the manner that you might like for it to. Now, the moon is receiving aspects from Saturn, Jupiter, and the sun. And in case you're wondering, I work with all the Parashara aspects, which are judged on a scale of 0 to 60, right? So the moon's receiving aspects from Saturn in Uttada Ashada Nakshatra, Jupiter in Mula Nakshatra, and the Sun in Ashwini Nakshatra. Now, three of those nakshatras are what are called Dhatu Nakshatras. Dhatu Nakshatras are the mineral nakshatras, right? And so what do minerals do? And you're probably just going to say, well, rocks just kind of lay around, right? So there we go. Maybe I'm supposed to lay around for the day and do absolutely nothing. Well, maybe it's good to relax and to lay around and do like a little bit of nothing so that you don't get all frustrated and amped up about something, right? And that's perhaps something you need to look at. But really, when we're dealing with Dhatu Nakshatras, minerals are strong. Rocks are strong. You can stand on them. They'll support you. The earth supports you in all that you do, right? But when Dhatu Nakshatras are having, well, for lack of a better way to put it, issues, right? Then they long for a level of support. Okay. And it's the moon's tithi or the lunar day today, in addition to the solar lunar yoga, that's making it feel like you're disenchanted and you want somebody else to support the thing that you really believe in. And you may or may not be able to get somebody on board with that. But trying to muscle your way through the situation and push through the thing that you're ultimately trying to create just because you're feeling a little nervous and you're feeling a little anxious is not necessarily the right thing to do. Here's a little secret. You can learn a lot about the energy of all the nakshatras that are interacting by understanding the body parts that each nakshatra is connected to, right? Who would have thunk? So Saturn in Uttada Ashada Nakshatra is connected to the thighs, right? Then you've got Jupiter in Mula Nakshatra. Mula Nakshatra is connected to the feet, right? And then you've got the Sun in Ashwini Nakshatra, which is connected to the knees, okay? That's all leg stuff. So what do our legs do? They carry us through the day. So there's something about those three energies interacting that are about carrying you through. And the level of determination that you feel in order to bring something into being is really exceptionally positive. You don't need to let go of that determination, but you need to let go of the need for recognition that you're putting so much energy towards something. And you need to let go of the attachment that somebody else should support you just as strongly as you're supporting a situation. Because if you're looking for that, it's not going to happen. If you're looking for somebody to go, wow, you're doing a good job and you need to keep on doing it, it may not happen. But if you're willing to kind of go, hey, that will happen, right? All you need to do is support yourself and recognize this is something I believe in. Because I believe in it, I have the energy that I need to put towards the situation. I know it's right inside of my heart. I'm taking action. If other people aren't taking action, hey, you know what? That can be okay. So we're looking at those leg connections, the thighs, right? The thighs move our body around. That's like one of the strongest muscles in the body, except for your bottom, so to speak, which is another really strong muscle. The knees are all about being able to bend, right? Imagine if you walked around stiff-legged all the time. You're not going to get around that well, right? So you have to be a little bit flexible and you have to be a little bit adaptable, okay? And then you have the feet. The feet support the entire body. Well, the feet are connected with Mula Nakshatra. And with Mula Nakshatra, there's always an element of something unraveling. So somewhere in your life, something is beginning to unravel and beginning to fall apart. And at the same time, with the moon in Punarvasu Nakshatra tomorrow, you're looking for something to potentially come together in a better manner. But as I was saying, it's not coming together at quite the speed that you would like for it to, but it's coming together at the speed that you need for it to. You're just feeling a little frustrated with the drudgery of the situation that's, kind of building up and building up and building up, and your feeling isn't going anywhere, but really it is going somewhere. So we've spoken about the body parts connected with Saturn aspecting the moon and Jupiter aspecting the moon and the sun aspecting the moon. How about the moon itself? The moon is in Punarvasu Nakshatra, which is connected to the fingers, right? So if the legs are getting tired of trying to muscle your way through a situation, then the fingers need to do a little more fine tuning and a little more development. But again, that's your work. That's your handiwork, right? There's also a really deep connection going on here, which is the fact that the moon is in Punarvasu Nakshatra and Jupiter is in Mula Nakshatra. And you're probably going, why is that a deep connection? So I'll explain. If you read the Taittiriya Brahmana, right, which is from the Krishna Yajurveda and is one of the, at least as far as I know, it's the oldest known text that actually talks about the nakshatras in description, right? Rig Veda mentions the nakshatras by the names of the deity, but Taittiriya Brahmana actually goes into a description of the nakshatras, which is pretty deep, right? Well, when you read the sutras from Taittiriya Brahmana or when you read all of them, I should say, one thing you'll discover is almost every sutra says of a deity, right? So, for instance, let's talk about Jyeshta Nakshatra. Jyeshta Nakshatra says of Indra, right? And let's talk about Bharani Nakshatra. It says something of Yama, right? Well, when it gets down to Punarvasu and Mula Nakshatra, it doesn't say of. It says for. Okay, so I'm going to read you the sutras here because they're really interesting, and I'll explain a little more into depth where I'm coming from in association with this. Okay, so let's read the sutra for Punarvasu Nakshatra first, which is the restoration of good for Aditi, who's the boundless mother of the Adityas. What are the Adityas? The Adityas are, for those who don't know, they're deified versions of the sun. What is the sun astrologically? It relates to our Atman, or the soul. So Aditi is the mother of the souls, and in a sense, the mother of all souls, really. Okay, if you understand it that way. So the restoration of good for Aditi, the boundless mother, is the wind from above. What does wind do? Wind can be pretty harsh, but it can also blow change in, which can be refreshing, right? Or it can be intense and, knock our hair out of alignment and then make us have to go like that. Oops, sorry. So the restoration of good for a DT is the wind from above and moisture from below. So when you're facing that harshness in the world, when you're facing the harshness of change, right, it helps to make you more fertile. You have to develop your own capacity to soothe yourself. In a sense, Aditi being the mother of, the Adityas or the sun personified, gave birth to something and believes that it's better for her children to face those changes and to face those transformations because those transformations strengthen, and to be independent enough to soothe yourself and bring your own support from within yourself, because when it boils down to it, Punarvasu Nakshatra is one of those Dhatu Nakshatras. Okay. So here's the interesting thing. When we go and we read the sutra for Mula Nakshatra, it too says of. It too says for, rather, because the one for Punarvasu says for as well. So the one for Mula Nakshatra is the uprootings for Niriti are fracturing from above and breaking into pieces from below, right? So Aditi is creating and bringing something into being and wanting that thing to be strong and wanting that thing to be independent. Nariti is going, well, that has been created, I'm breaking it apart and taking it apart piece by piece. But here's the trick. Mula Nakshatra is also a Brahma Nakshatra. It's a creative Nakshatra. So it's teaching you that as something is falling apart that was previously created, something new is coming into being, right? The problem is in each of our worlds somewhere, we may feel that that something new that's coming into being isn't quite coming into being quickly enough. And that's generating a lot of restless energy, making you feel like you're kind of in this battle all by yourself. You're willing to be devoted to the situation because 3 of these nakshatras are Brahman nakshatras. The Brahman nakshatras tend to be very chaste and they're very devoted to a particular outcome, right? So there's a great level of wanting to be devoted to this path. And one part of you is scurrying for answers, looking for solutions. The part of you that is picking apart the situation and going, right, something's falling apart and I need to create something new. That's equally, even though on a certain level that sounds very Mula oriented, that's the moon in Punarvasu Nakshatra, because Punarvasu Nakshatra is a cat, right? I'm going to give you a description. Right? Cats are always cleaning themselves. They need for everything to be perfect. Might taste good. They want everything to be absolutely perfect and terrific all the time. So they're constantly cleaning themselves. They're finicky, right? Guess what? Mula Nakshatra, which is where Jupiter is a dog nakshatra, right? Dogs are very loyal, right, to things being a certain way. Guess what cats and dogs do? They fight. Therefore, we have the term fighting like cats and dogs, right? So one part of you that is trying to bring something new into being is loyal to something that existed in the past, right? And you keep going, well, I can make this thing that was there before a completely different way, and then that can still exist. Well, guess what? That's not going to happen, right? You got to kind of roll with the changes a little bit. Look at how you can develop something new from something old that's falling apart, right? Be devoted to the very same outcome that you had in mind, but just with the allowance of letting it come together in different ways. Now, you're going to listen to this and you're going to go, yeah, but I watched your recent videos and those said the same thing. Well, guess what? Energy hangs around for a while, right? So you'll find that happens in a lot of my videos. I'll find a theme and I'll kind of roll with that theme because the energy is kind of hanging around. And we have to kind of recognize that and move with it, right? So don't get nervous, or if you are nervous, learn how to use that nervous energy constructively. Don't give up the pursuit of the thing that you're interested in, but let yourself kind of change how you're working with the situation. Let yourself see a new way something could come into being. And don't feel like everything has to happen right now, because it doesn't. You have time. Okay. As I mentioned to everybody, I am offering a 10% discount on astrological services until 10 p.m. London time tonight. That's about 3 hours from now. Those are not on all astrological services. Sorry, I should clarify. They're on my intensive consultations. And as I was saying at the beginning of this video, the intensive consultations, what those are is I have one specific consultation that I had previously, which is called the intensive consultation. And that contains an overall karmic analysis, working with your Rashi and your Shasti chart, right? And it allows room for that particular consultation, allows room for an additional question. So I did that consultation for a while, and I'm still offering it. So you can still schedule that if that's the one you're interested in. But then I decided, you know what? It would be great to offer these consultations focused on relationship. So looking at relationship karma for the individual through looking at the nodal axis in the Rashi, Saptamsha, and Navamsha to understand the overall relationship karma. And then with that particular relationship or the intensive relationship consultation, giving the person the opportunity to understand when the next relationship might be coming up as well. So giving them the things to work on to prepare themselves relationship-wise, and equally helping them to understand when that period might approach. So that same philosophy is taken and applied to the intensive career analysis, which can look at your karma around success, why you might have a hard time with success, and how you might be able to work with those energies in order to help yourself to become more successful. Another thing you can have a choice of with that consultation, rather than the karmic side of that, is to know what you're meant to kind of do, where you're meant to put your energy in terms of vocation, right? And that also has the capacity to predict when you might get your next job, or when you might get the job that's more connected with your natural field, right? Okay, so that's the intensive career consultation. Then you have the intensive financial consultation that works with the Hora and the Chatra Tamsha chart, and the Rashi chart as well. And that helps you to understand where you may be stuck in regards to prosperity, and how to help yourself to open up the flow again. And equally, it takes a look at the financial ups and downs and gives advice on how to work with those particular periods. Now, all of those are 10% off at the present moment if you go and visit my astrological services page, which I just gave you a link to. And if you enter the code intensive in all uppercase letters. Now, if you didn't catch all of that, it's also down in the text of this video. In addition to that, I have an ongoing weekly webinar series that's devoted to the secrets of the nakshatras, understanding what each nakshatra is asking you to learn individually. So if you have Jupiter in Bharani Nakshatra, what is that nakshatra asking you to learn about your Jupiter and what Jupiter rules, right? Those are the secrets that I'm working with on this particular nakshatra course. You can join that course one class at a time, or even just take one class, or you can join it by semester, or join it in full. We're about 5 classes in at this point. If you join it in full or by semester, you get the recordings of all the previous classes. If you just join it by the class, then you get the recording for that particular class instead. Okay, so here's the link to the Esoteric Secrets of the Nakshatras page, which I have just posted there. All right, anybody with any questions, right? I got about 5-10 minutes. And thank you for all your birthday wishes. Very deeply appreciated. And I have time to take a question or two here and there. Okay. And I'm going to have a drink while I'm waiting for people to ask questions. Thank you to anybody and everybody who has voiced their birthday wishes here. And if you have any nakshatra related questions or astrological related questions, I've got another 5-10 minutes or so that I am willing to take any questions people might have. Boy, I got to rambling there for a while here, and it's I'm just completely overwhelmed by people's, happy birthdays here. So thank you so much. Okay. Let's see what we've got here. Thank you for your birthday wishes. I'll give people another minute or two to ask questions. Can I speak generally on Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra? Well, Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra can be on many levels, for some people, a very frustrating nakshatra, or it can equally be a very inspiring nakshatra, right? So, how do we know which of those it's going to be? A lot of that depends upon Jupiter. And in addition to that, it equally depends upon the well-being or lack of well-being, I should also say, of the planet that's in Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. Purva Bhadrapada is an Ugra Nakshatra and a Krura Nakshatra. Now, generally that means cruel and violent, but it doesn't mean that people who have planets placed there are going to be cruel and violent, but you may occasionally find people who have that placement who are, right? So what's trying to happen with Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra? Well, it's trying to help us to elevate ourselves beyond our earthbound experience of consciousness. Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra is connected to Ajja Ekapada. That is a one-footed goat form of Shiva. And if you understand the concept of the goat, right? So the goat doesn't need much nourishment in order to survive, but the goat also provides milk, which is very nourishing. So goats don't need much, but they're able to give a lot. Okay? So this is also a Dhatu Nakshatra. So with Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, the question of support comes into being too. So those things that you're inspired by, other people may not be inspired by them. Okay? That's a key lesson to learn. But the idea is to support those things that you believe in supporting, rather than getting frustrated, angry, and intense at other people who won't back you up in terms of what you need, right? So Ajja Ekapada also relates to the concept of God in potential, right? And in regards to that, God in potential gives lots of nourishment and doesn't ask really anything for us other than the fact that we evolve rather. Sorry, I got distracted by somebody's notes there. Okay. So it's the concept of God that is God in potential with a little bit flowing into the earthly realm and a little bit connected to the heavenly realm. So 1 foot here in the mundane, 1 foot here in the spiritual, where really they're all kind of connected with each other, right? So it can bring energy down in order to nourish, and it can lift energy up in order to elevate, right? It has the capacity to do both of those particular things. It's also a nakshatra that's connected to the concept of a platform. There are a few nakshatras that are connected to the concept of platforms, which they give you the capacity to see something from an elevated state, right? When you're practically involved in things and your practical approach to something isn't working well, because it's also a Manusha nakshatra, it gives you the capacity to go to a higher level, to elevate the situation, see things more clearly, see things from a greater sense of perspective, so that you don't get all frustrated, right? But you'll notice quite often with Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, there's this quality of frustration. And it's all about, rather than getting frustrated at your, whatever might be going on right now, Venus is in Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. Rather than getting frustrated at things not being able to change in the way you would like for them to, you just need to focus on your capacity to put your support into a situation and your capacity to devote your time, energy, and attention to something and not get worried about what anybody else is doing. Okay. So the question that somebody is asking in regards to what makes me follow the tropical zodiac. And there's a few other questions here too. I'll answer that question to you. First of all, I want to state that I'm not anti this zodiac or anti that zodiac, or nor do I think that anybody should use the same exact techniques that I do, nor do I want to convert people to doing the same things that I do, nor do I even really want to debate people who do something different than what I do. I know a lot of good astrologers who work with the sidereal system of astrology, right? And it's not me bad mouthing that. I'm a strong believer in the moment that we kind of go, right, this has to be the only way, there can't be any other ways, is the moment that we invite in somebody else to come along and go, well, right, what are you going to do? Persecute me if I use a different system, right? So, sure, using the tropical zodiac with Vedic astrology might be considered a little untraditional, but perhaps it's not non-traditional, because actually if you go in and you read like a certain passage from Panchasiddhantika, you kind of get a hint that maybe Varaha Mihira was a supporter of the tropical zodiac too, right? I don't have that exact passage in front of me. I would read it for you, but he says something along the lines, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he kind of conveys the concept that the rest of the world seems to be switching to a different system, yet India remains the same, and he questions why, right? So I know what I'm saying is really controversial. I don't mean for it to be controversial. I'm just answering the question that somebody put forward. So why do I use it specifically? Well, I found myself using the Hiri Ayanamsha for a while and doing a sidereal zodiac. Sure, my accuracy level was pretty good, but I found myself relying much more upon my intuition than I was relying upon replicable astrological techniques. So I tried fine-tuning the Ayanamsha I was using and switched to a different Ayanamsha called Arja Galactic Plane Ayanamsha, and still used the sidereal zodiac, and was still using Sara year for the dashas, and it got a little bit better, but it still wasn't really where I wanted it to be. Then when these particular techniques were introduced to me in, I think, 2013, then immediately when I looked at things and worked with techniques with it, it was like boom, 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 and everything lined up perfectly. And I was using Nakshatra year for the dashas then. And with the techniques I was using, everything was working. Dashas were lining up perfectly. Techniques were being able to be replicated without like having to go, well, this could mean this and this could mean that, and having to rely upon my intuition. It just became clear in the chart. So that was a big paradigm shift for me. And because that was a big paradigm shift for me, I kind of went, well, no, maybe that's not the right thing. And I went back and forth between it. But after testing it over hundreds and hundreds of charts, and yes, even kind of going back and experimenting after I had already kind of switched, I found that it was turning out to be more accurate in almost every single instance that I was using. And it wasn't a thing of bias because I tested to see if it was biased. So that's my answer in terms of why I use it, but I'm not trying to say everybody else should use what I use. And I really don't want to get into debates or arguments with people about it, because for me, it's not in any way, any sort of disrespect or dishonor of tradition is meant. As a matter of fact, I do it because I just want to help my clients, right? So that's probably the easiest answer. So what makes me want to follow the tropical astrology? It's because I want to help my clients, and this allowed me to help my clients more deeply. Okay. So let's see what else we've got here. No, somebody's saying, do nakshatras have enemy-friend relationships with each other like planets? Oh, by the way, let me kind of go back to that question about Rashis. My main focus is on nakshatras, right? Which I believe can bridge the gap between people who are using different like zodiacs, right? Because we're all using nakshatras, and even though I may use a tropical zodiac, I'm using sidereal nakshatras. Okay, so both systems are using sidereal nakshatras, and I think that's where we can bridge this gap of what's right and what's wrong, is if we focus on nakshatras. Do nakshatras have enemy-friend relationships with each other like planets? Also, do certain planets function better in certain nakshatras? Nakshatras are not rashis. That's a thing that I quite often tell people. So there's not really friend relationships between nakshatras, right? At least in terms of the work I've done, I've never found that to be the case. Do certain planets function better in certain nakshatras? Not necessarily, and that's a topic that's open for discussion. If you use the sidereal zodiac, the nakshatra positions stay static over, thousands of years, because the idea is to connect the zodiac to the constellations. If you use a tropical zodiac, the placement of nakshatras alters over time, which kind of looks at the concept of how our relationship to a specific nakshatra can evolve and change and grow over time, which I kind of like that particular concept. And that's not me denigrating any other concept. But back to the question at hand, planets don't really function better in certain nakshatras because it depends upon the planet's overall well-being that's determined by a lot of things, like the avastas of the planet that's in the nakshatra, the avastas of the planet that's associated with the nakshatra. I don't like using the term rulership because they don't really rule nakshatras. They're just associated with it for the sake of Vimshotri Dasha. I tend to call them emissaries because they're like messengers. And of course, you want that emissary to be strong because he'll give the message of the nakshatra well, right? So they don't function better in certain nakshatras because it's related to the avastas of the planet. In addition to things like Digbala, right? And Ishta and Kashtabala and Shubha and Ashubha Phala. All those things can get taken into consideration in terms of judging the well-being or function of a planet in a nakshatra, okay? Somebody's asking the question, how do nakshatras of planets in Navamsha integrate while reading them in the Rashi chart? Okay, so here is how I work with nakshatras, which again is not me saying everybody else needs to work with nakshatras in the same way I do, because I don't believe that. People who I'm teaching, I teach them nakshatras in the way that I do it because they're coming to me to teach them, right? So in answering your question, I'm kind of giving you my answer in relation to how I work with things. Nakshatras are related to the fixed stars. Okay, obviously, we know that, right? So they're an astronomical component of astrology. Okay, so since they're astronomical and they're things that are in the sky, the only astronomy in the horoscope, or I should say the astronomy in the horoscope, is focused in the Rashi chart. The Rashi chart shows the astronomy of the situation. Okay, the divisional charts are a division of that astronomy that doesn't match up to the same astronomy that's going on in the sky, right? That's why equally planetary aspects don't always work well in Varga charts, okay? So if you have a planet, like let's say, for instance, you have the moon in Punarvasu Nakshatra in the Rashi chart, okay? Even though that moon is going to be in, is going to be in Cancer, right? It may be in a completely different Rashi in the Navamsha chart. Let's say, for instance, because I'm not using a sidereal system, so Navamsha placements may be different. So I'm just going to say, let's say that moon happens to be in a completely different sign in the Navamsha chart. It's still going to be in Punarvasu Nakshatra. So planets don't change nakshatras in terms of how I work with them just because they change Rashis. They keep the same nakshatra position from the Rashi chart, and that nakshatra position from the Rashi chart carries over to the divisional charts. I have found that to be the most accurate approach with it. Okay. All right. So everybody, thank you so much for your birthday wishes. Thank you so much for all the really wonderful questions that you have asked. I'm going to go celebrate my birthday a lot more. Again, if you want to take advantage of the intensive series of consultations. So here's another thing too. So what do I use in order to interpret for these intensive consultations? Well, of course, I'm looking at Rahu and Ketu, influences to them, and dependent upon the type of intensive consultation you're doing, like if it's the relationship consultation, I'm working with the Navamsha and the Saptamsha, but I'm looking at nakshatras of Rahu and Ketu, looking at nakshatras of their dispositors. All those things come into the interpretation, including things like Varga deities. So it's very deep and in-depth and helps you to understand your karma in the 4 areas of just your overall life path, or your relationships if you choose the intensive relationship consultation, or your finances if you choose the intensive financial consultation, or your career if you choose the intensive career consultation. It helps you to understand how you approach those things and how you might be able to change how you approach those things in order to make your life better. And each of those consultations contains a certain number of additional questions. With the regular intensive consultation, it contains 2 additional questions. With the rest of the consultations, it contains 1 additional question because they require a lot more research. So if you're interested in scheduling one of those and getting a 10% discount, all you need to do before 10 p.m. London time tonight, which is 2.5 hours from now, is take a journey over to my astrological services page linked here that I've just put in the window and enter the code intensive in all uppercase letters when you go to make payment. If you're interested in learning more deeply about the nakshatras and the secrets of each nakshatra and how to work with them therapeutically and how to work with them on the evolutionary scale, you can visit this link that I'm providing now and register for the course. And I'm going to answer one more question because somebody said, whoever number 37 is, that the thing is that my favorite 2 astrologers use different methods. The tropical makes sense to me more, but I followed the Vedic. They're both Vedic. These are both Vedic astrology, okay? Tropical, it's not that if one is using, because one's using tropical, that one's not doing Vedic, right? So I'd like for people to try to make that distinguishment because there's tropical and sidereal, not tropical and Vedic, right? I'm doing Vedic astrology, only working with the tropical zodiac, right? So followed the Vedic one for a long, so you mean the sidereal one for a long time, so it's hard to change it. Work with whatever you gravitate towards most. Work with that, right? Nakshatras are the same regardless. The only thing that changes nakshatras, because both systems are using sidereal nakshatras, the only thing that changes that is the ayanamsha or the calculation for the nakshatras, which some people use different ones, but there's generally going to be more overlap with that. Okay, so thank you, everyone. I'm probably not going to do a video on Julian Assange. I try to keep things as apolitical as possible in that particular regard, but I am aware of the news that happened, and it was rather shocking to me too, right? So thank you, everyone, for watching, and I do very deeply appreciate it and hope to talk to you all soon. Bye now. And thank you for all the wonderful, wonderful birthday wishes. Bye.